Welcome. My name is Courtney Burt, Marketing Coordinator at MIT Sloan School of Management Executive Education, and I will be moderating today's event. But while we wait for people to log on, please comment and let us know where you're joining us from. We've already seen a few locations. I'm here on the East Coast. I know that a few of you are on the West Coast, so let us know, drop a comment below. And before I introduce MIT's Court, Chilton, and Doug Reddy, who are joining us today for a discussion on leading enterprise teams, I wanted to let you know that their new executive education live online course, also called Leading Enterprise Teams, is coming up soon. Registration is now open, and you can find the link on our website or in the details tab above. Court is a senior lecturer at MIT Sloan and the MIT Leadership Center. He is also the faculty director for a number of custom executive education programs for senior executives, as well as for the 5-week advanced management program. The AMP, as it's also known, is an intense transformative learning experience with a select group of experienced executives focused on enterprise-level issues and practices. Some of the teaching and networking in that program informs the work that he and Doug do with companies in the new Leading Enterprise Teams course. This is launching soon. Prior to MIT, though, Court helped large organizations improve business results with a combination of learning, coaching, and enterprise-wide change via Lean Six Sigma and branded client experience initiatives. That's not an easy one to say fast. And we were also joined today by Douglas Reddy. Doug is a senior lecturer in organizational effectiveness at MIT Sloan, where he focuses on enterprise transformation and building next generation organizations. Doug's research and writings literally coined the phrase enterprise leadership. His trilogy of Sloan Management Review articles set the agenda for highlighting the unique challenges of what it takes to lead at the enterprise level and what senior leaders must consider when leading enterprise level teams. He has designed and led enterprise leadership for companies all over the world. Last year, Doug presented his findings from his recent research on the complexities of leading at this level in the digital economy at the World Economic Forum. And I have to note, both Doug and Court not only teach, but they are also practitioners in the field and leaders in their industry. I'm looking forward to gaining insights from their expertise right now. That's so much to discuss, and I'm so excited. Court, how's it going over there?
Going great. Thank you, Courtney. Great to see you and everybody who's joined us here from what looks like all around the world. Just amazing, the diversity of places and people that have joined us. It's so terrific. Looking forward to doing this. Just to give you a little bit of a headline on where we're going. I'm planning to mostly interview Doug, and we're just going to have a conversation. And we're hoping you'll join in via the comments section. So I've got about a few questions for Doug about sort of what his research lately has been revealing to him. He's been doing research in this area since the early zeros of this century. And then we'll get into what surprised him and what he and I have both found surprises executives when they get into roles that basically require them to act in an enterprise with an enterprise orientation. And so just so you know, we're headed that way. We'll talk about where we see dysfunction, what we think the root causes of it might be for people who are enterprise leaders. And we're hoping that we'll cover a broad range of topics about people who have to lead at the enterprise level. So Ben, though, we're hoping to get you involved via the comments section. Courtney and I and others will be watching there just in case you have a great question that we will get you inserted here in just a few minutes. But what I thought I'd do is at least start by asking Doug just sort of a context-setting question and sort of give us a little bit of a common language about enterprise leadership. Again, he coined the term, has been writing about this and teaching about it and consulting about it for quite some time. And I thought I'd just start by asking him, he's done recent research about companies that have digitalized and what leadership looks like there. But before we get to that, I just wanted to ask him what he's noticed changing just in the last few years in the space of enterprise leadership. What is coming to the fore? What stands out to him? What stands out to you, Doug, as you think about what enterprise leaders need to be doing now or need to be doing more of today?
Okay. Well, great. Well, first of all, let me add my thanks and welcome to everybody. Yeah, it does look like a really great international audience. I'm delighted to be doing this with you, Court, and thank you so much, Courtney, for setting this up and for those very generous introductions. So I just like to ditto what Court said. Let's have a dialogue and a conversation about this. So we'll give our views on some of these things, but you folks are out there every day struggling with these issues. So we really want to hear what's on your mind as well. So yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that stood out for me as I began to think about this, as what's becoming really clear is that things that were first thought of as soft, being transparent, being vulnerable, showing empathy, things like that, are, if anything, emerging as center stage now. And so this is something that has taken a long time for executives to come to terms with and to embrace the soft part of leading at the enterprise level as something that's hard. It's all about how leaders show up, and yes, there's a whole series of skills that they need to have, but at the same time, what is really standing out is increasingly that these soft skills are becoming absolutely critical. It was interesting to note, we ran a different course last week that we did from this new research called Reimagining Leadership for the Digital Economy. And we were lucky enough to have Dan Shapiro join us, who's the recently appointed Chief Operating Officer for LinkedIn. And I was just amazed to see the emphasis that Dan placed on when we asked him questions like, what makes a great leader in the digital economy? It had nothing to do with the cleverness of your algorithm or anything like that, but had everything to do with his capacity. He spoke in very personal terms. Everything to do with his capacity to show up, to be real, to ask for help, to express gratitude. Things like that. That he said, because those are the kinds of things that people are looking for, so that they feel connected to you as a leader. These things in the past were just viewed as soft. They weren't able to be measured. That has changed now too. So we don't just think, we know that these things are center stage and are really important. And, just as we're talking about these, I'd love to hear from other people if they share those same views that why maybe 20 years ago, if you think about Dan's comments, 20 years ago, you might look at someone who's, displaying vulnerability and humility and asking for help and, as maybe a sign of weakness rather than strength. And now that sense now that he brings to the table with his team opens up the floodgates for people to have honest conversations with him. So I mean, that's probably the most important thing that stood out, is what we once thought of as soft are now becoming center stage and really hardlined into one's capacity to lead even very senior level teams.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thanks, Doug. And I noticed some people talking about leadership as putting the humans first, and that all that is, I think you would second. Another one, just to get people sort of grounded in some of the recent research you're doing. You've already mentioned the leading in the digital economy, and that is what's standing out to me about companies now, is that digitalization requires a new form of leadership in some way. People need to show up differently maybe than they did in the past. Companies are more atomized, they're flatter, all those kinds of things have been trending for quite some time. But I'm wondering if there are a few things that you notice people are needing to let go of in terms of their approach to leadership, things they need to be doing more of, maybe some things that are I don't know if enduring is the right word, but that you just need to keep doing, Doug. So, but this recent research is super interesting from that perspective too. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, that's a great question, and in fact, we saw that, and it's kind of a corollary and a nice really build onto that first question, because we asked those exact questions to people. What is it that maybe is the same about what makes a great leader or a great leadership team, and what is it that's different? And we not only conducted surveys with thousands of people from 120 countries all over the world. But we also did dozens of C-suite level and C-suite -1 level interviews, one-on-one and in focus groups. And then we also ran some specialized focus groups with Gen Ys and Gen Zs, just to make sure we weren't only talking to the senior level people.
Yep.
We wanted to get some, real surveillance from the ground, where people are making those decisions about wanting to join companies or not. What were the elements that might serve as talent magnets for them, and so some of the things that, it was like a treasure trove of data that we gathered more than 580 pages of interview notes from this. And we actually then performed a sentiment analysis and a heat map analysis. So we actually had pretty hard data, even through qualitative survey methods and interview methods, that made it pretty clear that there were certain things that were once considered normative. This is how leaders lead, right? So those were the dimensions of leadership that everybody just embraced and accepted. But there were also these things that we keep hearing people talking about. Maybe not quite, exactly sure of why they're important yet, but they're terms that are emerging. And then third, just as you talked about, there are some steady state, tried and true, old chestnuts, things that are just, ring true. Doesn't matter if they were 40 years ago now or 40 years from now. And these were what we call the enduring leadership. So we had the eroding leadership skills, once embraced, but now becoming toxic. The emerging leadership skills, things that were maybe even under the radar 5-10 years ago. And then the things that we called enduring, So an example of the eroding might be top-down leadership, right? Might be feeling like you're the steward of 50-year plans. I've worked with companies literally that had 50-year business plans, right? And so you see things like that were, gathering and keeping information close among a small knit group of people. Those were some of the things that, power was information rather than, and it was, stuff like that. Those are the things that in today's world are just becoming, antithetical to what a great leader does or what great leadership teams do. A couple examples of emerging behaviors and skills were things that, who heard of empathy as a leader behavior even 10 years ago? I guarantee you that would have not shown up on almost anybody's leadership competencies profile 10 years ago. And now, it's all over the place. And perhaps the number one thing that people are saying are important is for leaders to demonstrate in an authentic way empathy, because they want to understand where people are coming from, what their needs are, so that they can help to build teams that both build a kind of cohesive identity as the team, yet at the same time are paying attention to us as individuals. And we see that as really great. Transparency, another one that that was something that you basically didn't see too much of 20 years ago, even 10, 15 years ago. Inclusiveness is now incredible. So these are the emerging skills that it's just absolutely vital to create, a sense of belonging, which you hear more and more and more of. And the enduring things you can just guess. There are the things like trust, integrity, being able to have good communication skills, have a really strong customer obsession, things like that. That it doesn't matter the time, the circumstance, the culture, the context. These are things that are going to be tried and true, important 50 years from now. So we found, and we actually we put those three, what we call the 3 E's, eroding, emerging, and enduring leader behaviors into sort of a framework that we're now able to work with companies on, to be able to have them assess as teams, where are they in this kind of spectrum of leader behaviors. So really, really interesting. I'd love to hear from people about what they think are the eroding, the emerging and the enduring leadership skills, because, I just rattled them off really quickly, but I'd love to see what's on your list, that people could share with us. It would be wonderful if we could have some comments like that, so. And the reason that those things are important, Court, is because when you're trying to bring about change in an organization, and you have a leader who's expressing a narrative about the new leader behaviors or the new culture and climate that they might like to create in an organization, but they're expressing that narrative as if it's fact already, affirmative. And yet the people listening to that narrative and trying to engage with you are actually saying, well, it's a little bit more aspirational than affirmational, and if you don't have that kind of conversation, if you don't open up the dialogue to be able to let people say, well, yeah, I'm inspired by this, but it's not real yet, and we need to do the following things in order to get there. It's that type of thing that we need to pay attention to. If you want to be a great leader at that enterprise level, you need to be able to open up the dialogue and actively listen to folks to be able to really see where we are and see where we need to go.
Yeah. So there's lots of great comments here about people saying, gosh, I wish we had more of this. I wish we had more of this empathy in the political world, all those kinds of things. And I'm going to hoping to get some of these questions to you in just a moment. But one more from me, Doug, because this notion of an enterprise leader, where you're responsible not only for your part of an organization, but you need to be able to work across the organization, maybe diagonally across the organization. And that's a particular kind of leadership. And it's not one that people enter right away. Usually they have to have a certain amount of experience. Sometimes it's associated with level in an organization. But it's this enterprise-wide view. And when people get into roles where that's part of their remit, part of what they're accountable for, what I wanted to ask you about is what you've noticed that people who are new to these roles are surprised by. What gets in their way? What shock is probably too strong a word, but it makes them sort of sit back a little bit and say, whoa, I wasn't expecting this. Anything that you would say about that?
Well, yeah, that's a really, really intriguing question. Because my view is when we think about the leadership and the leadership development journey, it's one of the most treacherous transitions in that journey and on that path, because we've spent decades as leaders accumulating power, and getting our next preparation ready for our next promotion, learning how to deliver results in our targeted silo, whether that's a function, whether that's a business, whether that's a project, whether you're a country manager, and now so that you become comfortable with that as the recipe for being promoted. And in fact, people have been promoted by demonstrating and executing those behaviors effectively. They're really, really good at nailing things in their own silos. Whenever, and I don't even, put a negative impression on silos. If we go back to those eroding and emerging and enduring leadership skills, that's what they were supposed to do. That's why they got rewarded. And so all of a sudden that builds into them this notion that this is how I should think and this is how I should behave. Now you get to the point exactly as you just brought up, where they still have to actually, hit their numbers or achieve excellence in their function, in their project, in their business, in their country. But at the same time, they've been brought to a level in their organization where they both have to do that and think and behave across the enterprise, because you realize at a certain level, and these folks need to learn to appreciate the fact that a customer or a partner or a client actually wants the full capabilities that your organization can deliver to them, whereas before you were just responsible for kind of your own accountability within that patch. And so so this is something that folks have to learn. they have to learn, that, I'll just use my own, I live by this, it's one of my favorite sayings, is you get more power by giving it away. And that is something very difficult for people to appreciate and to understand, is that indeed it's your capacity to help other divisions out, to help other functions to succeed, so things like that are the things that now are the things that actually are the new sources of power and influence. And let's face it, I mean, that's part of what this is all about. You have the accumulation of your capacity to influence other folks to be able to get big things done together as a team. And so and I don't use the term political in that sense of being subversive or anything like that, but understanding that now your stakeholders are absolutely central to your being able to execute your responsibilities, at that enterprise thinking level. And so it just requires a new set of not only skills, but kind of how you show up, and the mindset, the tone that you set, the style, the sense that you bring to your job. So much more engaging, much more helping to shine the spotlight on not only your team, but also partners in other functions. And in fact, in this platform economy, even other business partners, whether that's intra or inter company, so you have to think about, so that's the thing that I think, to get back to your original question, that's the thing that surprises most people, that all the stuff that they have spent time learning and worrying about and buying for competition wise, to be able to get ahead, are now the things, if they maintain those types of behaviors, are going to be the things, well, he or she's not able to let go. He or she's not able to be collaborative, things like that. I mean, those are some of the things that are problematic. And we have to think about kind of not quite unlearning the things, but building upon. All right, I do know how to deliver results. I know how to motivate a team to get big things done. I just now have to think a little bit more broadly, provide a certain level of context and perspective for those with whom I'm working. Things like that, I think, are really important.
Yeah, there have been some comments. We have a really international group joining us here, Doug, and there have been some comments about how does this apply internationally. And you've worked with a number of global organizations, Unilever among them, Ford another. And I was wondering, what would you say enterprise leaders need to be doing with this sort of globalization trend, where much more requirement to work across borders, to work with multiple cultures, those kinds of things? Has something struck you there?
Yeah. No, I've got actually a couple of really good examples of exactly that. In one of those Sloan articles that I wrote, I actually profiled, made it very, very personal. I mean, the whole article was all about the day in the life of a whole series of enterprise leaders, and one was a senior vice president from Pfizer. I'm not telling tales out of school. It's right, published in the article. He approved the quote. Fellow by the name of Rod McKenzie, and Rod had spent 7 or 8 years cultivating a superstar in his division, and Pfizer was growing in an area in Japan, and Pfizer had a big need for someone with this individual, whose name was Dawn Hawkoff, and her skill set, and even though Rod had spent like close to a decade cultivating this person to take over a big role in his division, he felt as though it was the best thing for Pfizer, for the enterprise, to be able to move a superstar talent that he had cultivated to go to someone else's, to one of his colleagues, so that they could win. And that's a really good example. It's a great question from whoever did it. It was a really good question, because you have to think of the overall, the context of the organization. Rod didn't get any, thing in return for that. He did it because it was in the best interest of Pfizer. And so that was something that, now you could say long term, if we actually believe in the things that say, all right, somebody who demonstrates enterprise first thinking eventually will, that it's going to turn around and be good things for him. But he didn't do it, and he did it because it was the best thing for Pfizer and its clients, and so it's that type of demonstration, and that's a really good example of something that he moved this person for a 3-year assignment right out of his unit with no promise that she was going to come back. So the question, I think, is a great one. So you have to think about that your sandbox, your playing field, the arena in which you're working now spans the globe. So for those companies that are doing this on an international basis, you have to begin to think about not only your kind of immediate business partners and your stakeholders there, but the whole concept of stakeholder analysis has to span the globe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of interesting questions in here too about some of the tensions that thinking in this way brings up. So there was an earlier comment about this all sounds great, but what if the numbers are bad? What do we do then? We can't have this human-centered approach to things. I'm not sure you would agree with that, but but that's the kind of thing where we have I've still got to hit my KPIs or my OKRs for my part of the organization, and yet you're telling me I need to be accountable for these other things. How do I navigate that? People are particularly curious about where the rubber meets the road on some of these things. It's like, how do you have to do this and that, really? And how do you find a way to be and both in your approach and in your thinking?
Yeah. Well, I mean, by having an enterprise first mindset, it doesn't mean that you get a timeout or you get a permission to not hit your numbers. I mean, so it's often what I say to senior leaders is, welcome to leadership. Did you expect this to be easy? I mean, this is something that, that this is a difficult thing. And it's helping one of the important, I guess I call it a skill, that an enterprise leader needs to think about with his or her team is to say, look, there are going to be certain what I'll call embedded tensions that exist in an organization, and this is a perfect one. We want to work collaboratively. So we think about the Pfizer example. Yet at the same time, that boss might be saying to Rod, wait a minute, Rod, what happens if by sending Dawn off there, you kind of miss your numbers? Well, I think that's the courage that a leader might have to take to say that I'm going to make those decisions because I think it's in the best interest of the enterprise. It doesn't mean, though, that individual is going to get a reprieve or a timeout. It just means that when you're talking with your team about some of these challenges, it might be, well, find a way. What's it going to take for me to both deliver what I need to deliver in my unit, in my business, for my project, in my function, that sort of thing, while at the same time minding the store to be able to work across the enterprise. And those are some, there's a whole series of embedded tensions that we face every day. And you don't have to be up at the enterprise level in order to have those tensions facing you, but these are the things that you have to learn to reconcile them with your people. I don't mean solve them, but by reconcile, I mean address these tensions head on, and try to work toward an accommodation of, and if that means you go to your division head or your boss and you explain why. You say, look, the impact for Pfizer, if we're able to make this move, to be clear-headed about some things, understanding that there's going to be a price to pay, but I'm going to make this call. And I think courage has to come in, perspective has to come in. It's not a situation where you throw out the whole understanding that you have accountability, yet at the same time, you have to talk with your folks. I mean, I've had examples like this. You and I have had examples like this of working with another large pharma company where we had exactly that situation where the CEO was trying to actually, have a very strong emotive purpose statement. And I happen to be facilitating this part of the session. You were deeply involved in this one as well, and and it was exactly to the point of the person who asked the question to you, Court, where a woman raised her hand in the back as the CEO was giving his very emotional purpose statement about his narrative. And she goes, yes, this is all very interesting, but what does this have to do with the pressure I'm feeling from my VP telling me I have to do a better job of hitting my sales numbers in my unit in Thailand? And that is the welcome to leadership response. It's like, okay, you've got to find a way. There are no easy answers to some of these questions, but you have to make that judgment call and to do the assessment, to understand that if I'm pursuing making sure that I'm actually addressing the challenges that are facing my own unit, but I'm also contributing to what's best for the enterprise. That I know this might sound soft, but that things are going to work out. I mean, you keep your customers front and center, you keep what's right for the enterprise front and center, and I think at the end of the day, that scorecard is going to turn out just fine.
Yeah. There's been some interesting comments. Just try to bring as many of these ideas into the conversation as I can. What I wanted to talk to you about, I'm going to turn towards the dark side a little bit here, Doug, but sure. What I wanted to know is sort of like, what happens when people don't play in the way that you're describing? So there's been some comments about, what contributes to dysfunction in these enterprise leadership teams or enterprise leaders. Some people are talking about the increase in the level of pay for people who are near the top of large organizations as being one of the drivers of leading people away from behaving in the way and thinking in the way that you're talking about. Other people are saying it's just sort of endemic. It's human nature. We don't have enough people with a servant leader mindset. But any thoughts from you about where the dysfunction comes from and what to do about it?
Yeah, well, part of this is the human nature element that you're bringing up. So this is not to suggest that leaders aren't going to struggle with this. For all the reasons that we talked about earlier. That one of the things that brings me right back full circle in a way was when we talked about these eroding skills and now the new and emerging skills that we need to focus on. The fundamental drivers, once you start dealing with folks that are kind of up at this level in an organization, they are not without a well preserved ego, right? So you're dealing with people who have accumulated a considerable amount of power and influence and ego, that they are the ones that deserve to move into that C-suite. So you see a lot of folks that for them competition comes more naturally than collaboration, and because that's how they've been brought up, that's how they've been promoted, that's how they've been rewarded, and so so these are folks who are very successful. Parenthetically, they're very rich often, so they're not working for money anymore. So they're, and what they're working for is either validation on some level, because that this is like, all right, I know I'm really good, but now I want some of the signals, the outward signals of that, and being elevated to the C-suite or to that top cadre of maybe the top 150 in a very large organization matters to people, and in some cases matters less than money to them because they've probably done that part of it already. So I think that that it depends on how people play that game. If they're at that career stage where they have to then move to that one level and be able to recalibrate what success means as a team leader at the enterprise level. It means your capacity to bring others along. It means your capacity to help others succeed. It means your capacity to cultivate your next generation of enterprise leaders. People that are under your wing, so to speak. I don't mean to sound paternalistic about it, but people who you've got their back. It's not just they're there to support you, but you've got their back as well. And some people don't play that game very well. I mean, they're just and so that's the people that can't get out of that rut or that routine are usually the ones that might derail in those situations.
Yeah.
And you've probably seen this as well. I mean, you're the faculty director at AMP. You've seen these people that are at a certain point in their career. They're now trying to learn what it's like to lead in a whole different way.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The AMP is interesting because people arrive at it. We sort of screen. We want people that are humble, willing to admit that they still have work to do as in terms of becoming a leader in their organization. And so they arrive with sort of this openness mindset. And what's always striking is that when they talk to their coaches that are part of the program, they talk about the other people that aren't playing in the way that they hoped they would. And so we spend a lot of time about how to bring other people on board, how to create trust. And sometimes it's not just about their own behavior, but it's about structural moves that need to be made. My favorite example, I teach another course at Sloan. And we had a guest speaker, a guy named Robbie Bach, who was the person in charge of bringing out the Xbox for Microsoft. And he realized that a lot of people on his team weren't playing well together, in part because the culture at that time in Microsoft was that if you had a P&L, then you were somebody. And he had people on his team who all had P&Ls, and their job was to make that P&L look good. And so it was hard to get them all aligned around one vision for the Xbox. And so we said, nope, you got to let that go if you're going to play on my team. We're going to have one P&L for the Xbox. And some people wanted to do that, and were okay with doing that. And other people who were not, they just had to go back to doing some other thing for Microsoft. Yeah. So for me, that's the thing that we try to help people with is what are some of these more structural systems level actions that people who have an enterprise goal, a role, it's not only how they show up and think, but also where are the levers that they can pull to try to make some of this more, it's fuzzy isn't the right word, soft isn't the right word either, but it's more enterprise level kinds of behaviors come to life. I'm wondering if you had a favorite story about someone who dealt with a group of people where some people were on board with this and others were not, Doug.
Yeah. I don't know. This one's probably a little bit of a personal story. That one of the things that is my favorite stories is also happens to be one of my favorite companies. That I've worked for a really long time with Royal Bank of Canada. Familiar name is RBC Financial Group. They're the largest, most profitable, most admired company in Canada, and I've had the honor and the pleasure of working with them for many, many years, and just great people, and yet at the same time unbelievably successful. And in the past, they have a long heritage of being the best of the best, and so it's kind of an employer of choice situation. And you grew up aspiring to become a senior leader at RBC, and so they realized at a certain point in time that the very leader behaviors, all the things that we've been talking about in that eroding bucket, for example, were the things that really were the kind of critical thresholds that leaders needed to have in order to get ahead. But they realized that those were the very behaviors that might prevent RBC from getting to that next level. So they'd asked me to create one of these enterprise leadership institutes that Courtney was talking about before. And So I did that with them over a number of years. And one of the students or participants in the program was a fellow by the name of Dave Mackay. And Dave was a very successful kind of, I call it again, not with a negative connotation, but he was a silo leader. He knew how to execute, knew how to get things done, very technically savvy, but he was a unit leader. And emerged to be one of the unit leaders of their biggest profit engine. And then, but he was one of the participants in that Enterprise Leadership Institute. And it was like a light bulb going on for Dave. He just got it in terms of saying, if I just continue to be a phenomenally successful unit leader, that might be great. I might make a lot of money, but I might not make a CEO job for the next RBC, where RBC is headed. So we really took this to heart, and I spent, quite a bit of time with Dave. Not because of me, but Dave eventually was promoted to CEO of RBC, and because of a lot of the change in behavior that he demonstrated. And about a month after he was brought in, he just said, look, this really was helpful to me, but how do we make this contagious for 85,000 people? And I think that's a real success story. That you have a leader, the light bulb goes on, they understand this is their way forward, they want to pass it on, they want to help create and set a new tone in their organization. And I think that's just kind of a really great example of a leader who understood that no matter how successful he was in that case, he needed to learn new skills. He needed to adopt a new mindset, a new way of showing up with his people. It wasn't because the way that they had led in the past was wrong. It was right for the times, but the times are changing. And he had to move into that next kind of threshold level in order to get ready to lead. And so to me, if we can do more and more of that, find leaders who have a kind of continuous learning capability, who are resilient enough that they are trying to learn what they don't know, to be able to then collect new skills, new perspectives, that kind of thing. I mean, those are the stories that are really great. Just one more quick one. Another individual that actually a Sloan alum, Alan Mulally, former CEO of Ford and Boeing Commercial Airlines. Alan and I actually together wrote that third Sloan article on becoming a great game-changing leader at the enterprise level. Alan shared with me, he said, look, I was a brilliant engineer. I'm not going to be humble about it. I was a great engineer. But my first management job at a senior level, where I had to manage other engineering managers, resulted in my whole team leaving. And I asked one of them why. And Alan turned around and said, one of them turned to him in a moment of honesty and said, Alan, you're the most brilliant engineer I've ever met, and at the same time, you're the worst manager I've ever met, because you still want to be the smartest engineer in the room. You wouldn't unleash our talents. You wouldn't, and that was incredibly powerful for Alan as a learning experience to understand that notion of you get more power by giving it away, and you shine the spotlight on others. You do things together. You win as a team and things like that. Those are the stories to me that make what you and I do, Court, all worthwhile. That in some way that what we're doing can touch the lives of people so that they feel as though we've helped them become better leaders. And so those are just two examples that come to mind.
Cool. One of the things that I've been thinking about over time, Doug, is we've mentioned these tensions and navigating and reconciling those tensions. And I've sort of been collecting mantras, if you will, or watchwords or sort of principles about how to weave through those tensions. A couple of examples. One of them is you can't optimize a system by optimizing each of the parts of the system. Not every part of your system needs to be quote unquote world class. And if you try to do that as an enterprise level manager, you're going to mess up the effectiveness of the entire system. Another one I've come across recently is for enterprise leaders is to try to make everything as common as possible, but distinct when necessary. So in your unit, if it needs to be distinct for some reason, then you need to advocate for that. But most of the time, you should be working for common tools. People have been mentioning ERPs, for example, things that sort of share data across. Amazon has a number of principles around that. So I'm wondering if you had watchwords, that things that you think people keep in mind, these pretty effective enterprise leaders, things they keep in mind or that they revert to just to remind themselves about how to handle these complex, ambiguous situations that they're encountering every day almost.
Yeah. I mean, I think it, to me, comes back again in this knowing of there are doing skills and there are being skills, and the being skills is in a sense all that stuff that you just mentioned and talking about, understanding that you bring to the table a sense of perspective, a sense of context, a sense of community, of working with your people. That to be able to say that these tensions that exist, you have to recognize that some of them are embedded at the level of leadership that we're talking about. This notion of we're globalizing, yet as one of the people said, how do you make this real for somebody on the ground? So we have to go global, local at the same time. We're digitizing our business models, but at the same time, we've never heard more of a scream for a sense of meaning and purpose from people. And so we, to understand that some of those are embedded tensions, and the ones though that are human-made. I won't say man-made, but human-made. Tensions. Those are the ones we have to pay attention to, because those are when we're, we're causing them. This notion of the collaboration compensation thing. Well, fix it. That's a problem that we can fix. And we can work on that and things like that. So we want to understand and appreciate that there are certain senses that an enterprise leader has to bring to the challenge of their role, and understand that while dealing with these tensions, we want to sort out which are the ones that are embedded tensions, and then we have to just address them. And that's one of those welcome to leadership moments, that the skill then is in the kind of helping people to come to terms with the fact, and for them to best have their best case and narrative and discussion, and with their people about how they're going to try to resolve this, or at least find a way forward that works, for both parties involved, but then separate out some of the things like the compensation collaboration thing that are, they're of our own doing. And those are the things that we need to begin to reconcile, at least to be able to say, we're going to work some of these things out, So I think those are at least some of the things that when we're trying to approach, these tensions, is to which are the ones that we have control over, that we can, it might be a process that is lagging behind the vision of where we want to go. So you might have a vision of collaboration, but a business process of a compensation system that still rewards silo leaders. So that's fixable. We can fix that. We can work through that. There are others that we just have to sort out, of the kind of the globalization, localization, digitization, humanization. I mean, these are things that are conditions of what's going on in our business climate right now that are making us feel a little bit insecure, a little bit uncertain, and we have to try to help people sort through that and get to the place where they can create their own leadership narrative about how to navigate some of those choppy waters.
Yeah. There's been some comments about a couple of old white guys talking about enterprise leadership, which I want to come to in a second, because I think you and I both have strong views about this. But before we get to that, there was a question earlier that I think is something that we all wrestle with, which is you're talking about holding. These people need to hold two competing ideas in their head, which is another way of saying it. That's an adult who can hold two competing ideas in their head. We need innovation and we need efficiency. don't necessarily go together, but we have to be able to do both. And so what you're talking about is, someone was saying, could you really scale things like these soft skills, this sort of, can you scale a mature way of thinking about a system and a mature way of thinking about the tensions? How does one do that when it's, you can imagine scaling up some technology and making it available to more users, but scaling up a mentality, that's where we had some questions earlier, and then we'll come back to the other issue.
Yeah, sure. Well, first, let me take issue with some of the comments that they made about the two old white guys. Well, one is in you, an old white guy, and in me, a really old white guy. So, no, I mean, this is obviously, when we're talking with something of this level, this is, we've got to be able to build organizations that are as different. I can't apologize for the work that I've been doing for the past 30 years. So, and what we try to do is to help build talent systems that are open and inclusive and bring people along. And I've spent my whole career trying to, cultivate those types of environments and organizations. So, but I think the things that you talk about are what I call, the process of appreciating and managing a series of dualities. How do we keep these kind of seemingly opposing, elements or pressures in our mind? Short-term, long-term is the obvious one that we have to think about. Fast and slow, or there's another one that we have to think about. So we keep talking about, that today's business models have to be, rapid acceleration and experimentation based and things like that. But at the really big deal things, we've got to be a little bit thoughtful about them. When this whole notion of speed, but some of the C-suite people I spoke to at the same time said, when you're at the point where you're at a bet your company decision, it's very rare that you see a successful CEO and C-suite team make those types of decisions overnight. So you've got to, so you have to deal with those dualities when you're trying to manage a transformation, because if you're at the enterprise leadership level, now you're front and center as part of the leadership team that is helping to guide a transformation. So again, you've got to think about some of the things that might be critically important for you as an enterprise transformation leader, yet at the same time make sure that you're preserving the heritage. So we might say, okay, well, I love my company or my organization, and I, in fact, view myself as a humble steward of that business model that helped create that. Yet at the same time, I have to be part of the cadre that is bringing about bold catalytic change. And so these are the dualities that enterprise leaders need to face. It's not that either one is wrong or off center. It's just that you can't just say, oh, I'm going to just stay in love with my company and its business model the way that it was crafted 30, 40 years ago. But that doesn't mean I don't love my company or really value and appreciate and honor where we've come from. But because I feel so deeply about that organization, I need to be a bold change catalyst. So I mean, those seemingly opposing sort of roles that we have to play as enterprise leaders are things that we need to pay attention to.
The things that I've noticed enterprise leaders needing to do, Doug, you've mentioned a couple of times various initiatives like how to scale up. We're just talking about scaling up enterprise leader skills and doing and being. But there are other initiatives like developing a whole pipeline of leaders that are often new initiatives for many executives who arrive in this role. It's like, how do I inform the development of the leadership pipeline here? And I'm wondering if another one that I see a lot in our work is we're trying to drive innovation, both in daily work and in our product and service offering in our platform. But are there other things that you think, initiatives big goals, corporate transformation you're just talking about a minute ago seems like it's almost too big, but are there certain other things that that you see notice enterprise leaders having to take on board for the first time when they get into this role?
Yeah. Well. I mean, it could be even tweaks in the business model that you see taking place, or the way that work is getting done now. So you see an organization like PwC. PwC spends a lot of its time actually helping organizations to digitize their business models. And yet PwC, in a moment of, they speak at another course that I run called Implementing Enterprise-Wide Transformation. And they come as part of the regular, practitioner speaker group. And they talk very openly about the fact that it was one of these physician heal thyself moments when they realized that their own people lacked the digital savviness that was needed for them to actually perform their core function of helping their clients to do that. And so, that's now, this is something that becomes an enterprise level play, that if you're going to do a digital upskilling, it has to be something where we need to level set that across the enterprise. So you can bring it down to that level. It doesn't have to be a broad-based, enterprise, massive transformation, but it could just be that, wait a minute, my team increasingly is needing to cultivate digital tools in order to get their job done effectively. And I need to reach out to other parts of the organization who have already done that with some level of success, and maybe ask for some help, maybe ask for some reverse mentoring for somebody that might be, quote, down on the hierarchy in the organization. Maybe do some mutual mentoring, where you start to bargain a little bit and say, look, we need some help here. We're pretty darn good in these areas here, so these are some of the things that you can do to be able to help others along, to cultivate, to see that these are some of the day-to-day doing things that are done at the enterprise leadership level.
Yeah. Cool. I know we're just about near the end of our time. I just was going to ask any sort of final things that we didn't ask you that we should have, any sort of words of encouragement that you wanted to provide, Doug?
Well, I've always said, and I really believe this way, that as stressful as it is, as filled with, these choppy waters as it is, I just view leadership as a privilege. And, it's as the story that I shared with Dave Mackay and RBC. I mean, it's a privilege. Dave views it as a privilege to be able to help bring an organization along. If you get at the level that what we're talking about here, to emerge as part of an enterprise leadership team of an organization, you can bring about rather dramatic change in what's going on in your organization, in what's happening in your communities, in terms of making your organizations. I mean, we poke fun at it before it ourselves, but making your organizations more diverse. You now have the influence that you're able to say, these are the things that I believe in, that I care about, that I want to spend my time in for the next, phase of my career. And you can help to build organizations that, as I like to say, are purpose-driven, they're performance-focused, and yet they're principles-led at the same time. And I think you have a better opportunity to be able to do that if you spend the time to think deeply about what it takes to lead at the enterprise level and work on that and make that happen. And I think that that's something that I think that I'm excited about, and I know you are too, about the new course that we're developing. I mean, in fact, why we built it,
Right. So thank you for that, Doug. I am looking forward to this new course because it's a chance for people to wrestle with all these issues and to do some planning around how to show up in this way in their own organizations, how to bring other people on board. So I want to thank everybody for joining today and for all the comments. I wish we could get all of them in here. We'll have more room for that in the course that we're going to offer later in March online. If you'd want to know more about that, I think Courtney and others can load that up into the chat here or maybe onto LinkedIn as well. So thanks for doing this today, Doug, and Courtney, thanks for helping set us up. Hope this was useful to all of you out there all over the world. Feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn, and hope to see you soon.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
And thank you
for joining us. I just wanted to add also, if you have registered today on LinkedIn, we will send you a recording as well as the link to register. It's in the details above, and if you're watching on YouTube, it's in the description below. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.